It is just now 10 o'clock. People are still popping in, so we want to give them a couple more minutes, and then we will get started so we can be mindful of everyone's schedule. So thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Jocelyn, I can go ahead and do the admissions if you want to just show the AOC screen share.
Okie dokie.
Just as a friendly reminder, this training is being recorded. We ask that you do keep your line on mute, and we will make the recording available later on in the week for anyone who wants to view it.
All right. Well, it's 2 after 10, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us today. Um, if you don't know already, my name is Jocelyn Pachaki. I'm one of the compliance auditors. And we also have Carol Farzetta, the Director of Real Estate Development Compliance. So she's here. Rob is on, and Katrina, she helps oversee the implementation on IHCDA Online, all those updates that we like to see. She'll be here to help answer any questions on average income testing. So let's go ahead and get started. Carol will be manning the questions in the chat. So if you want to post those in there, I'll stop randomly throughout the training to see if anyone has questions that we can address as a whole. If they are particular to a situation, um, probably be best to either email or just put it in the chat, and then we'll make sure to get that answer back to you. So let's go ahead and get started. There we go. So last year, this is a little similar to last year, but we do have new information. So those that attended it will look familiar. For the new staff that are joining, this is probably going to be your Bible for the next 2 months. So we'll be looking at creating units, creating utility allowances, tenant events, complete and submit the AOC report, how to resolve AOC issues. That's a new one. And then obviously the average income test is new. So, and that will be towards the end. For quick reference, this will provide that guidance for directing any questions that you might have after the fact with slide numbers, so you can easily access if you have any questions. So let's get started. The annual owner certification training guide. As you are aware, and most of you, here is the online website that you can go to get the IHCDA online. And you want to click the authority online. The rest of it, I'm not sure if everyone has access to that, but just for the sake of what we're talking about today, Authority Online is where you want to go. We do have issues with other browsers. So if you're not having access, the Internet Explorer 10.0, 9.0, Firefox 17 and 18, those are the best web browsers to use. If you call and you're like, I can't get in, but I have access, it's been approved by Megan, please, before you call, check your internet browser to make sure that's one of the ones you're using are the ones that are posted on the login page. Okay, and that'll save you trying to get a hold of one of us. So as new properties come on, as new staff come on, it's really important that your owner reaches out to Megan to let us know that you need access to a particular property or a particular portfolio. We would need to know the bins for that. And if you want to just put all your staff that are new on one email and all the bins that are associated with whichever staff. So Megan, she gets swamped with multiple emails. We all love Megan, but let's be nice to Megan. And have those emails succinct. And so they're not completely bombarding as much as possible. So definitely get with your owner. If you have your login username and password, you might just want to make sure that's still working since maybe you haven't inputted information. Other people have been uploading events. So maybe check that out before January 31st. So if there's any issues, you can get your password updated, or we can help remedy any issues that you do come across. So in this section, we will walk through the annual owner certification from start to finish. And we'll probably see this multiple times. We really strongly encourage that you guys put in your 10 events every 30 days. This will allow time to correct any data entry errors. And as you get closer to the January 31st date, the stress level will not be as big, although that's, oops, sorry about that. That's really hard to do, I know. Oh, crud, sorry. Up. Oh, no. Oh, gosh. Hang on, let's just use regular buttons. Okay. So yes, so every 30 days. I know that Rob's been emailing individuals that he notices that the 10 events aren't in. So we are tracking that a little bit more. There's no late fee or anything right now. But just be mindful that we are monitoring that and that you do need to be putting in your 10 events or you'll get an email from Rob asking you to do so. So 30 days, we talked about that. Creating a unit is done when you sit down to do your AOC. But we are going to cover lots of different topics and addressing your questions and concerns during that time. You've already put in your 10 events after the fact, and you're using this training to go through your web pages, or I'm sorry, your 10 events if you just need to do certain areas or slideshow 64 for the AOC walkthrough report. And that might be outdated because I just noticed that. So don't go off slide 64. But yeah, I will get that updated to reflect that difference. So owner certification, this will take you to a list of your portfolio only. And if it's not in there, you can let us know, but it should be in there once the 8609 has been sent out to you guys and entered by our IHCDA staff. And there's other tabs that you can go into here to see additional information, which we're not doing today. Okay. lot of great information here. I'm just gonna go say, show all owner certifications. Side note, if you need to go in there for another reason, we're really trying to cut back on that. It's been kind of an issue in previous years that individuals are asking, hey, I need to update information in 2018, 2019. If it's a minimal issue, we'll probably do that for you instead of having to keep it open. There are reports that directors do throughout the year and at the end of the year. And so we want to be more mindful of opening up previous AOC years. So just to let you know. So the column 1 is a list of properties. When you're here, please be mindful of what year you're selecting. And I want to say that's been updated because if you enter it, let's say 2023, I'm sorry, 2024 year, you're going to have to delete all that information and re-enter it into 2023. And there was a few calls last year that individuals weren't really paying that close attention on which year they were entering information. So you guys don't have time to enter it twice. So make sure you're selecting the year. And then the status of events. So it's active, which means you can enter information. If it says submitted, then that means you'll need to contact one of the auditors to open that back up. And then if necessary, and that will be a conversation between you and the auditor. And then the owner certification is active. That means that you have not submitted the report either. So those are a few informations that you can utilize as you monitor multiple properties. Does anyone have any questions right now as I take a drink? Awesome. It looks pretty new, or it looks pretty much the same, just wasn't sure. So creating a new unit. So clicking on the building, when you get your 8609, you'll want to make sure that you reach out to Megan. She'll input the buildings for you and get that ready, but you will need to add your own units. So just be mindful when you have new properties coming online. We do the buildings, you do the units. So just want to let you know that. Unit information, as you're well aware, we want to make sure it makes sense to you and makes sense to your staff. So if it's unit building 01 or it's in the address 1217 Broadway, just make it make sense. That would be great. And then the type of unit, square footage, and all this is important and necessary. So when we run the reports after January 31st, the information won't create an issue later on. And it should populate, but we just want to make sure that all the empty spaces are filled up. So completing the requirements, this is what it looks like. We want to know what type of funding that you're getting and the start and end date. Pretty self-explanatory. So unit name, I've seen some fun ones. And some people like, yeah, we know, or like, yeah, we don't know why this was done at the time. But if there's like multiple dashes, it's kind of confusing. So just maybe keep it simple if possible. But then these are the units over here. So, we'll look at that. Oops. And yay, you created a new unit. We're so excited. You're excited. It all went well. And you just move on to the next thing. So we love it when things go well, don't we? So let's hopefully do that. Creating utility allowances. If the owner pays utilities, it says you don't have to enter a utility allowance. I think we might need to, this might be incorrect now. Megan, if you're online, or Carol, is this still the same? I thought we had to Do you still check it, but still have to enter the information?
You do have to check it and you do have to enter it. If it's owner paid,
Okay,
they have to enter everything that is owner paid, or the system won't know without that.
awesome. Okay. I just want to make sure that we still had to do both because I was a little confused. Thank you for helping. So following the instructions, we'll make sure that the slides are correct. So when I select owner pays utilities, you do have to do this for each building and then click update when you are done. Um, so clicking on the project name, click on the utility allowance, and then you can either add new or copy. If it's the same for all the buildings, then that makes sense to do that. You do have to enter them once a year. Um, and if it's not coming down in the drop down box of selecting utility allowance, that means there's nothing that's up to date to use. So if you're wondering why you can't find a UA to select when you're entering your tenant event, that is why. Um, here we go. So this is the property name, the description, and what works best is if you have a year in the bedroom count. So 2024, one bedroom, 2024, studio, whatnot. And make sure you're following the guidelines for its effective date. So get into the manual and make sure that it goes into effect within the requirements. And you'll select the utility company estimate. So if it's a PHA or if it's qualified engineer, HUD, do that. And then we just have to put the information in that you need. This is the only way you can put in a UA. You have to submit this every year. We've had previous surprises that people weren't submitting it. They were just saying this is what we're using and not submitting it to IHCDA. So make sure that is done every year. If you can use different UAs, so if you're using for electricity, you can use HUD. For water, you're using qualified engineer, then that's perfectly great, whatever works best for your property and for your tenants. Does anyone have any questions right now? Okay. So this is what it looks like, and it's all pretty. You have the year. Yeah, you can do that. And then you would select the type of source, how much. If it's owner paid, you can estimate it to be whatever, or I've had people put 0 in. Um, it's whatever you want to estimate it as. But if it's tenant paid, then you definitely want to break it down as the IHCDA or as the approval letter, UA approval letter states, because if not, it's going to really affect your total gross income. So, or I'm sorry, total gross rent amount. So, um, make sure you do up here, select the bins, because if not, it won't save. So make sure all these little buttons and boxes are checked. So once you hit submit and save, copy, this is what all it looks like. And so this is why it's so important to have a decent description in your UAs. So when you go into the tenant events and you select the type of UA for that property, for that unit, it makes the most sense to you. So you're not wasting time toggling back and forth. So if using a different type of UA, the HUD and PHA, labeling them with the date and the UA type, again, this is going to prevent any future compliance issues. As the years go on, it'll create a long list. So we want to make sure that the years are attached to those UAs. So let's get into creating tenant events. Okay. So let's do move in first, because that's how we all start, isn't it? There are 4 sections for the tenant event. There's event detail. We're adding members. You can add non-asset income or asset income. But the last 2, the non-asset and asset income, those are only needed if you're using the IHCDA option to produce the TIC within that program. If not, then that information isn't necessary. So again, we'll cover move-in, recertification, and transfers in and out. And then we'll briefly discuss the non-assets and asset income entries. So owner certification, this is obviously where you start. And then the properties that are under your portfolio will be listed. Again, make sure when we did this, 2024 wasn't an option, but it is now. So do not select 2024 or you're going to be very sad because you're going to be wasting time. So we'll make sure you're selecting the right year. So first you want to click on one of the plus signs, and that will bring down the add new event. And then you want to select that, and this is the screen that pops up. And so it's kind of self-explanatory. You guys are well versed in this. So the event type, it'll be move-in. Utility allowance. So what's the most current utility allowance that you got approved for? That's the one you put in there. The rent levels, income levels, the tenant portion, all this is used off of your TIC that you just created. So it all does need to align, or there will be issues that once you update and submit all your IHCDA report, it'll create issues. So, but we'll go through each line here as well.
Jocelyn,
So
just for,
yes,
sorry,
please.
Go back to the previous slide, please.
Yeah.
One of the biggest questions that we always get is, for the auditors and for myself, is if there's something that you need to tell us, how would you note that?
Mm.
The auditors read the note section. So if there is anything unique to the situation, to the specific unit, please put it in the note section, put the detail in there. That is your communication to us of any unique circumstance occurring with that specific unit or with that specific property. So please, please, please utilize that note section.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Carol.
Jocelyn. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, please. Okay. So as we're walking through here, it's pretty, like I said, self-explanatory. We'll want to do the move-in. It does not, if it does not autofill, enter the date for move-ins. The event date and the initial move-in date should always be the same. Like it says, unless it's an acquisition. Please, 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 when we're doing audits, that's been a big issue, is we're looking at the TICs, the event date, the move-in date. They do need to match. They do not match with the TIC. I'm sorry, they do not they do not match with the lease. They do not match with Section 8. It is not an automatic 8, or it's not automatic the first of the month on a TIC. If you want to match your lease with your Section 8 dates, perfectly great. But your move-in date, your event dates, they all need to be the same. So if they move in on 2/1/22, they will have a recert event date on 2/1/24. So the life of the tenant's residency. So any questions on that? I know it's confusing. And some of you guys have been doing it the other way, and then we've been asking you to correct your TICs. So anyone have any questions on that right now?
Jamie, you can unmute your line and ask your question.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to be clear.
Okay.
You said the move-in date, the event date, all have to be the same. So if they move in, like you said, 3/27,
Mhm.
that's the event date. But when it's time to recertify, is it the same month or the month before? So what I'm saying is, so if they
Mhm.
move in 3/27, is it going to be 3/30/2021? The example from what you look from the slide, or is it going to be 2, like, February? So I want to make sure I'm correct, because from what they do for HUD is always the first,
I
no matter
know.
what.
I
So I
know.
just want to be sure.
I know. Yeah, and that's what I think the biggest confusion is, Jamie, is the month and the year remain the same indefinitely, forever and ever and ever. So, let's say it's February 28th.
Okay.
Let's make this easier. 3/1/2022.
Okay.
The event date will be 3/1/23 for research. Your leases though, that's what's crazy. It can be 3/1/22, but then the lease would end 2/28/23.
That's what, yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why I asked, because of the, what we do. I'm like, okay, if we move them in, the way they expire, are we the first
Mhm.
of that month or the month before? So you're saying,
Yeah, just keep the month and the year the same as the move-in.
okay.
The month and a day. Gosh,
And
darn it.
Jamie-
So month and a
So if
day
they
is
move
always
in
the same.
3/27,
Just
don't move them. I mean, recertify them on the same date, or?
Yep. Their restart date is the same as their move-in date.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. HUD likes to, confuse us on some things, but that's what we have to do for LIHTC and home or federal programs.
No, that's very helpful, and I'm glad to know
Good.
that now.
Yes. So as you're going back through, I would encourage anyone that's been doing this to go ahead and change your ticks to how it should be. And if you're changing your tick dates, that means you need to use the true and effective policy. So, which means that if the event date is wrong and you do a true and effective date on 12/15, like you have them initial it on 12/15, it's true and effective as in the event date. So they're signing it on 12/15, or they're initialing it on 12/15. You can add that date, but the true and effective date of that signature would have gone back to the event date.
Gotcha.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that was helpful to other people and I didn't just confuse everybody. Anyone else, any other questions? Awesome. Okay. But feel free to interject anytime you have questions if myself or Carol miss you. So this is important. The program unit, we want to make sure it's a program unit. If it's a manager, maintenance, whatever it is, if it's market, we need to see market in your units if it's part of your application. Make sure those are in there, because it could mess up either like your applicable fraction, where you're saying all of them are market, or I'm sorry, all of them are program units. Obviously they're not, but we do need to see your market units and put it into IHCDA online. So coming down here, oh, where's that? I don't know why that's like that. Okay. You do not need to select anything from the drop-down box unless what it's current there is incorrect. So we want to make sure that utility allowance is the correct one. Once you have selected the current UA, the allowance field will fill itself. And then for the owner paid or market, you will click the blank space because you don't want to select a unit or a utility allowance that has a money attached to it, or that'll throw everything off. Okay. So this is a little bit more new this is the same from last year, but last year was kind of the new time we did this, there's gonna be 2 spots where the income will need to match. So the total household income, we'll need to put that there. Household income at move-in does not auto-populate. It must be entered manually. So, but when you restart, this does not change. If it was 0, please put 0.00. Don't put 0.1, because no one makes this a penny. That issue should have been remedied last year. So just put 0.0. And if it says it's an error when you submit, you can also put a note in that box that Carol had mentioned before. So we realize this person has no income, this person was homeless, whatever the situation is. So we have correct data. If we were ever to move off of IHCDA line, we would really love to have that data correct. So we're not going back, because then we're going to ask you possibly in your issues letter, does this person actually have no income? And so notes like that in the box are helpful, so you don't have to address or unnecessarily address an issue that isn't an issue. So if you forget to enter the household move-in before saving, you can't fix it yourself. You will also not be able to add household income after the event has been submitted. So that's when you would have to reach out to the auditor and say, hey, I forgot to add this. And we're not going to open it for you. We'll be able to do it on our side of IHCDA Online, which is DMS. So we'll be able to fix that much quicker than you. So just say, hey, this is the bin, this is the unit, or you can do it on the phone, and we'll just do it real fast for you, and we'll fix it fast.
Jocelyn, I see Megan
yeah.
has her hand raised.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes,
Sure.
Megan.
Hey, so previous before a lot of people was putting the 1 cent and $1 because it just gives them an error, a orange error
Right.
that says about the income if this is not really, they just try to avoid it and they use the note section, but that shouldn't be a problem. But it is going to give you a warning because it wants to confirm that that is correct, that this particular party don't have an income. So just in case you see that orange sign, that's what it is. It's just a warning just to confirm that this is correct, that they put that in, that they don't have income. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Love that you're here. All right. The rent and income levels that appear in the drop down are the levels that pertain to that project. We do, when we run compliance, it'll say there's too many of this percent. And then we'll have to go through your application, or we'll have other reasonings why, yes, we'll have to make sure that this is correct, and we'll send you, hey, this is an issue we came across. It's saying that you have 60%, but you don't have any 30%. What's going on? You can have more 30% sometimes, just depends, but we like that you're serving tenants at a lower rent and income level, which is great. But yeah, just be mindful that you're selecting the right percent or AMI, so it matches with the tech and what's on the application. Okay. All right. The tenant portion and rent assistance should be separated on the tech. Yes. So the tenant rent portion of the rent the tenant pays, it does not include the UA or any rent assistance. Okay. So whatever that gross rent is, it needs to say they're paying $500 for the tenant rent portion. The rent assistance has their own little section right next to it. Please keep that separate. It does get confusing because we'll need to verify that it's correct, because you're not supposed to obviously include your rent assistance for LIHTC properties. So if you're putting the whole amount and the gross rent, it's gonna throw up a red flag. So make sure we're keeping that all separate. Okay. If the tenant receives any federal assistance, we want to make sure it goes into the right spot. We have the tenant rent portion here. And then not a whole lot of people get non-federal, but there are a few. So make sure they're kept where they need to be in the right cell, because obviously it's counted differently when we're looking at tenant events. But to rent assistance, we want to make sure that it's selected the right type down here. Because we're all kind of looking at this as a long story. This isn't just a point in time. This is also part of the audits when we go back, when you're selected for your year, it all comes together in some way. So make sure it's a fluid story as you're entering your information. Okay. You will, like it says, you'll enter this twice. You'll enter it up at event details, but you'll also enter it when you add your tenants at the bottom. And if you have multiple tenants that have either one's elderly and the other's disabled, we want to make sure that all the special codes are selected that represents your members from below. It needs to reflect above in the event details. And then we'll make sure that we'll talk about that in a second. But if no one has any special codes, I know this is kind of blocked off, but I'm guessing it says single household or single parent, victim of, or VAWA, basically abuse. So just be aware of that. So again, we want to make sure it also is selected appropriately. The tenant receives rent assistance. It's property-based, tenant-based, or owner-based. At the source of the assistance here, it's RD or Section 8. If you're going to the left or right, household member count is between these two items, but we'll cover that in the next slide. Okay, any questions about entering Section 8 or rent assistance in general? Okay. Household member count, another number of people in the household, and it would include the unborn child if it is disclosed. But obviously that information can be updated whenever that is disclosed. And most often it is at time of recertification. If by chance after move-in they did become pregnant, we can definitely update that. All student household, all students, yes or no. That's really important, obviously, as we all know. The student count into the number of people that are students. If there are no students, then obviously it's 0. And then any questions again, or anything that you guys need to explain, please enter it in the notes. It does look like it does expand. So if it's a long explanation, feel free to do that. Or if you're wondering who will be doing the AOC for your property, you can obviously reach out if you have any questions or any additional information you'd like to add before or during the process of the AOC review. So we're almost done with adding tenant events. This is the last entry. This, I wish we could like make this bold and have highlights and flashing pretty lights to it. This is beyond important too, because if this is not selected, we cannot run compliance. So if you're LIHTC or any CDBG or home or NSP or any of those letters, please select it, because well, we might be nice and select a box here or there, but if it's pretty rampant throughout all the units that this box was not selected, we can't run it, and we'll send it back to you guys to fix and select the box for the type of funding program that the unit and or whole property is under. Okay. So please select that. Yes.
Wanda has a question. Go ahead, Wanda.
Okay.
what happens, because I've run into that problem before, and it just grays out. It will not let me check anything. And I think it's on the CBDG one. So what do I
Yeah.
do when it grays out and won't let me select it at all?
And is it the same time as your inputting and everything else is going okay?
Yes.
Okay. If that's the case, then you can let us know. Either you can write to one of us and say, hey, this is what's going on. Megan might be able to do a quick a fix on her end. Megan, have you come across that with it being grayed out while they're inputting their tenant events?
Yeah, usually it does that when a person has tried to delete an event and then try to put another one in. Sometimes it does that. It's more of like a deletion kind of thing. But if you send me detailed information, the name of the property, the bin number, and the unit, I can go in on my end and see what's going on. And it's just usually a quick fix.
And just to clarify, it won't be a bin number, it'll be an award number.
Yeah.
For CDBG. Yep.
So can you speak to the deletion and what you mean by that a little bit more?
Yeah, so usually when you're actually entering a tenant event and you may make a mistake and or this may not be the right tenant. Sometimes people hit delete and then they hit update and then they attempt to create an event again. So sometimes different fields are grayed out.
Okay.
So a way that you can open fields, if you go into like the event type and you maybe still, once you delete it and you go in and you're trying to do the same event, but it's like a move in. To make the fields open up, you can change different events to different events. So you can hit a composition update or rent update. It's going to open those fields back up. And then it'll give you an option to put the actual original event that you're trying to put in and be able to select the funding program.
Awesome. Thank you. That was helpful because I forgot about that, how to do that. Wanda, that makes sense?
Yes, I think that's
Okay.
what I did. I might have done something wrong where it didn't gray out and I deleted it, started all over again. And just in my mind, I just started clicking on something and went back and it let me do it. So I didn't pay attention to how it let me do it. So that might have been
But
the
it
case on the
worked.
delete. Right.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Thanks, Megan.
No problem.
Okay. So adding new member. So we want to, I know this all gets confusing. First name, last name, birth date, current income, student status, the relationship to the household, any special needs or gender. Social Security, not needed at all. So don't worry about that. But everything else that's here would be great to know. Race and ethnicity is not also a required field, although if you do put it in there, great. If they choose to disclose to fill it, you can fill in the Hispanic or Latino box. And that's that. So just was paying attention to the time. So we're gonna move on through. After filling in the first name, last name, date of birth, fill in the current income. As you add in members, remember the household move-in at income, whatever that was, if it's 55,000, your members' income total will need to match the 55,000. Okay, so if you get a warning sign or a red flag, whatnot, that's because those two amounts don't match. So we want to make sure household move in or total household income, depends on if you're doing research and move in, though whatever that income needs to match, okay, to what the member is making. So again, relationship, we want to have whatever they are. If unborn child, still important to put in there if you were notified. Gender, this field is required. This time there are only 3 options in our system. Okay. Okay, the relationship, the field is required, so we want to know if they're head of household, if they're a dependent child, live-in caretaker. You guys we need to know about that live-in caretaker so we can take a look at number of rooms, not income, but number of rooms, okay? This again is important. We want to know the special needs. So the special needs below that matches with the member information, that all needs to match above. So race and ethnicity, again, not required, but you can put it in there if you are notified, okay? So this is how it would look once it's all completed. We have their non-student, and Petunia is the head of the household. They did not notify you of their race and ethnicity, but their special needs is homeless and they're female. As you can see, there's 2 layers. So the first layer of information, first name, last name, that's this row right here. Student status row, that's this information right there, okay? Be careful when you're hitting this delete button, like we just talked about, it's going to mess you up later, okay? Because then you can't input information. And then we want to select update at the bottom of this page. And then, yeah, you can also, if you don't use the IHCDA online, you're done. So then you just update there. If you are using IHCDA online to generate a tick, we do need to add the non-assessment income and click on the drop-down box to choose the household member's income, choose the appropriate source. To add income for multiple people, again, just click on the add in non-asset income for all the applicable household members, okay? If there's no income for people, then you don't have to input that income, or you don't have to enter anyone underneath that information. Okay. And the other section that's needed is actual asset income. So we want to click on add asset income, the drop down box, and then you'll select the person that you need to enter the information into or enter the information for. And then choose if the asset is current or imputed, and that's going to look a little bit different now, right? So the passport rate right now is 0.06%, but we want to make sure, obviously, that's going to change every year now, or at least be updated and notified if it's going to change. So we have to be mindful of that. And then just the asset change on how to calculate that information has been changed with HOTMA. So as you're entering this information from your tick, just make sure all that new policy for HOTMA is being taken into consideration. And then I believe, if I'm correct, that the HOTMA training that Matt did last month is now on our website. So if you want to head over there after this and download that, you can. So complete the move-in tenant event by selecting the update form right here. That's covered with the arrow button. And then if you're generating the tick, that's where you hit the tick. And then click on the tenant income PDF that appears at the bottom, and then that's your tenant income tick. So, or your tenant income certification form. When it gets downloaded, make sure it is accurate. I was at an audit where, although they were doing all what they needed to do, sometimes the information wasn't generated correctly. So make sure you do still take a look. You input the information correctly, but just take a second look at the actual form once generated to ensure that it is, and then if necessary, make the corrections, okay? And then follow the true and effective policy. So the PDF is fillable, so non-optional charges can be entered as needed. So select the yes or no for the household income if it exceeds 140% at recert. But obviously it should always be no, because they haven't exceeded it at move-in, because that would be bad, because then they would be over income. That's a whole other issue. All right, so on to the next event. We're going to be talking about recertification. Any questions about move-in before we move to recertification? Okay, moving on. It's pretty similar, obviously, to what we did for income. I'm sorry, darn it, for a move-in. But we still want to add a new event because we have to add in a new event for recertification. For the recert date, again, it needs to be the same month and date. Just the year would change, okay? For tax credit, this should be the anniversary date of the move-in. So again, just a year. And then we're going to select recertify as the next type of event. Once you select that, the system will open up the fields that need to be completed. If it is grayed out, that means that you do not need to change that. And so obviously look at all the stuff that needs to be updated. So the next field is utility allowance, selecting the current UA. So again, that needs to be updated every year. Even if you don't think it would change the amount, if it's not going to change your UA amount, you still need to have a new year for your UA. So yes, we talked about that a few minutes ago on how to do that. So to move on that. Total household income, rent level, enter the total household income. Well, if you guys are 100% tax exempt property, then you're not recertifying your income, right? So the recert would just be the same as it was for move-in. So if they made 55,000 at move-in and you're 100% tax credit exempt property, then your total household income would be the same. By chance, if they're saying we lost our job and now it's at $1,000, that's notable. And you can take that in consideration when you're looking at their rent for the next coming year. But if there've been no changes, it would just be the same amount as it was at move-in. The rent income level for whatever, it shouldn't change because that's the unit that they moved into. So it does remain the same. And again, we want to make sure that this is still clicked as tax credit or whichever type of funding program that you're under in that unit. And again, tenant rent portion is the portion of rent the tenant pays. And again, it does not include the UA or the rent assistance that they are receiving. So again, it's all separated. This needs to be updated too, just to make sure that it's all the same. So if it's still none, just select none or update it as necessary. The tenant receives rent assistance, you must select the same. And again, if they look familiar, because they are. So you just have to redo the same stuff again for the year. Again, if people moved out or if you had a transfer in or a new move in to the current unit, we want to make sure this is updated. Kids do turn school age, or they are no longer school age and they're still living at home, and that needs to be reflected here. Okay. Any questions? Because this is kind of different because it happens randomly throughout the years as the tenants have been there longer. Any questions on this? Okay, great. And again, the wonderful box to put information in. Okay, almost done with the recert. Again, we want to make, I've already discussed this. Select this box just to make sure the all student house. This needs to be updated to reflect the changes, okay? Because that does change. Household member details. If there's any current income, we want to make sure that's in there. Especially if it's if you guys have market rate units, you do have to recertify income every year. Okay.
Jocelyn, we have two questions. We'll start with Pamela Campbell. If you want to unmute your line, and then after she's done, we'll go with Dorothy Rayford.
Hi, Pamela. How can we help you?
Yes. You mentioned that the percentage can't change if they're 40% or 60. I have floating units, and I, on
Okay.
occasion, will lower a tenant's rent. So when they eventually recertify, they could be at a different rent level. So I will be changing that from one possible year to a next, or actually even within the same year. Am I doing it incorrectly?
So if you do have units that are floating, which would be under the federally funded program, and at the time that you're doing a recert or an update, you would just make sure that your tenant events and your TIC and all of your documentation match why and what that rent level for that unit is for that tenant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. And then Dorothy, did we answer your question, Pamela?
Yes.
Perfect. Dorothy, if you want to ask your question.
Sure. Good morning. You stated at the time of a recertification, if their income changes and if that income is different from the income at move-in, that we should not change it or we should enter that amount in there. I didn't quite understand.
Sure. So, are you guys 100% tax exempt property?
Tax
Well,
credit, not
Tax
tax
credit,
exempt.
I'm sorry.
credit.
Tax
That's
credit
okay.
property.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you
Okay, so-
combo?
Right.
Pardon me? We're combo, yes.
Okay, so if you're
Right.
combo, that would not apply. You would still have to follow the combo rules and do the recert with the income verification.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Does that help? Does that
Yes,
answer
it
the
does.
question?
Uh-huh,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
if you were 100% tax credit only, then you only have to do the income at the time of move-in. The income wouldn't matter for the remainder of the time that the tenant's in there. But if you're a combo, or if you are not 100% tax credit in your property, then you would have to verify income.
Okay, thank you so much.
You
Sure.
still need to follow the guidelines for your individual properties. So thank you for asking that question.
Pamela, did you have another question, or is your hand still up from the last one?
I'm sorry, my hand is still up. How do I
Okay.
get rid of it? Oh,
I got it. You're welcome. Thank you.
You just hit it again. You just tap it again. All right, so we did great. We did a recertification tenant event. Congratulations. So definitely
One
when we
question, sorry,
Oh,
Jocelyn.
yeah.
Lori
Go ahead.
Lacona, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, can you identify combo?
Certainly.
Yeah, so if you're both LIHTC or tax credit and a federally funded program, so that's tax credit in home or tax credit and CBDG, tax credit and NSP. I mean, if that's what we mean by combo, you have to be tax credit and a federally funded program.
Okay, so many of our properties are tax credit and they're layered with project-based Section 8, where the property is 100% HUD. Do you consider that a combo?
Yeah, so if you have the Section 8 and you have that awarded through IHCDA and
No,
not
it's-
through your
it's not-
local housing authority.
No, it's not local, it's through government, it's federal, so it's federal project-based Section 8. So the property was, if a property was totally HUD, project-based Section 8 issued by the government, not local housing authority, would the tax credit, and then the tax credit was layered onto that, would that be considered a combo?
So I'm not familiar with federally allocated project-based properties. Typically, those are partnered through a local housing authority. If you want to email me with your property identification number, I can look and see. But essentially, if it's through IHCDA and it is Section 8 project-based housing, typically they have a housing authority that works with the property and they do the annual research and all of that. You would just fill out the tick with the information. They do the annual owner certs, and you could use Safe Harbor. If you are going through tax credit and you have another funding through IHCDA, you're part of the COC, permanent supportive housing, such like that, then your award agreements would be what would take precedent, and you would follow based on the award agreements. And to get those, you would get those from the owner to make sure that you're in compliance with all the requirements. Does that help?
Yeah, well, I'll send you our contract numbers. You know, they are federally funded and they're project-based
Okay.
Section 8, and they were acquisition rehabs that
Okay.
you know, were layered with tax credit. So I think we're talking about two separate programs.
Okay, yeah, send it to me and we'll go ahead from there. And then, Deborah, you're asking 100% tax credit does need to be recertified every 3 years, correct? Can you clarify what you're asking there?
Yes, you stated that the move-in income would never change and it's always going to be the same income. But it's my understanding that if you have tax credits, you do have to recertify income every 3 years.
Right, so for 100% tax credit, for our policy, you still would verify that the household is not a student household and such, but for the tax credit component, you could do the 100% tax credit recert form for us. You would not review the income. Now, if you have other programs, then you may have to do that for those components, but for IHCDA for tax credit, once they move in, if you're 100%, then you would not have to recert the income. All right, Jocelyn, I'm gonna let you move ahead because I
Okay.
know we're running out of time.
Yeah, I got 30 minutes. All right. Um, all right, so transfers in and out. Transfers, we do not need a tick to signify that a transfer happened. We don't look at those ticks, so, but we do still need to do a tenant event to follow up the paper trail and make sure income was income eligibility was conducted. So we again have the transfer button that we're transferring out. This is not a transfer in event type in the drop down box. That's because a transfer out event also creates a transfer in event. So we're going to transfer out, and that will take care of doing a transfer in. And the unit of the household is transferring. Right, the unit the household is transferring to must not be currently occupied in the IHCDA online system. So if they're going from unit 12 to 14 and you haven't moved out 14 yet in IHCDA online, you're not going to be able to transfer them to 14. So just be mindful of that. The transfer to building drop-down box has a list of all the buildings that have a vacant unit available. So if that'll be the clue that you haven't closed out the other unit because it's not there to move that person to or transfer that person to. So if that happens, you'll just need to go back to that unit 14 and close them out, move them out, do a tenant event for that, and then be able to transfer that other unit to build unit 14. Okay. And then definitely do an update to save your changes. Transfer in. So since here's what it looks like when you do a transfer out. Highlighted is a transfer in event that's been also auto created because you transferred out someone. So click on the transfer in event. You'll then need to go in and complete the remaining fields. So it's pretty simple, kind of creating a new event within a transfer. Okay. Warning, tenant rent portion, I can't say that, is 0. And that's kind of what we were talking about. And that's, if it's a warning, that's okay. That's just a notification like, hey, is this correct? And you might need to just go ahead and put a note in. Once you click on your newly created transfer in event, be sure to update the information that transferred over. Once all the fields are updated, click the submit button and you're done. So there are other events that you do need to input into IHCDA Align that don't necessarily need a tick. Composition update, rent update, student status are similar to, which are all similar to recertification. Once you can select the unit type, fill in the corresponding fields and select the update button. If you're doing a move out event, you will only be able to select the first event date and then the event type. Once you've entered these two, select update to save your move out event. That's the only information you need to change or input into the IHCDA online program for a move out. And again, that's just your event type and event date. So the owner certification report. Last year, I remember this was a big thing. We had not really been paying as much attention to it as we should have. So so hopefully everyone's kind of used to this now. But the report here, you see the documents, if there's anything you need to upload, but we want to select the continue with annual certification. Okay. First year certs must upload 8609. And again, that's this question. Is this your first AOC? If it is not, then possibly no 8609 is needed, but we will get a report in when we run compliance as 8609 has not been entered into the program. So I know I asked a lot for them last year, and it's the 8609 part 2. Which has your eligible basis and qualified basis amounts and how you'll be claiming credits. So we will send you the 8609 part 1. Once Jake signs it, you guys will complete part 2, and then you're to send it back to us, okay? And then you can upload it here if necessary, or you can also send it to your auditor that's doing your AOC. Does this information or does this property pay utilities? Are you guys in your extended use? This is probably a good idea to find that out now. If you don't know already, if you're in extended use, because once you get kind of closer, you're like, when did that placed in service, or when did my award affordability period start? So definitely good to know that ahead of time. And then signatories, if ownership has changed or people have moved on, if you need a new signatory form, let us know, and we will get that to you so you can get that completed and send back to us. All right. And here's I know I keep saying everything's important, and I feel like I'm Gary or Scott David, but everything's important. So make sure you're selecting, are you a tax credit only? Are you federal programs? Or unfortunately, you can't see it. It says combined tax credit and federal program. So make sure you have selected the correct unit, or I'm sorry, select the correct property funding type, because this will then kind of flow into what questions you get. And then the property management companies may need to consult with the owner or review the LURA to get this proper certification type. Okay. And if you can't find that stuff after you asked owners, we might have that. So feel free to let us know if you can't find it. So here's the annual certification button. Once you get into the property, you'll want to select that to get the questions. And so there's multiple appendixes, I think is the right word I want to use, or exhibits, that's the right word. So the certification year will be the last calendar year. So obviously we're going to be going into 2024, but you'll be doing the AOC for 2023. If findings of discrimination were noted, documentation must be submitted. And question 2, reasonable accommodations. That's another question. If this was something that you guys had to do for one of your tenants, then we would want to get that information. You need to enter that information into the exhibits. Federally funded programs with 5 or more affirmative fair marketing questions need answered. Question 7 with supporting documentation. If there's any vacancies, we do come across that, and usually that's because 10 events were not entered before submitting. And we realize, there's staffing issues still, but again, there's that 30-day encouragement to enter your tenant events every 30 days. So we won't have to go back, but if there are vacancies, we want to know what that marketing information is used. Why do you guys have an issue with getting the units filled or leased up? If there are any casualty loss forms that need to be submitted to Chris Rivera, and that maybe a building caught fire and you're not able to lease those units up, make sure we're noted. Information is noted in the AOC report and the 10 events. And then question 13, 8609 part 2, we will make sure we have that. 19 through 27 is all about properties. And these were reviewed by another, so it's probably the financial section. Make sure you have your financial information readily available because you'll want to know what your status is for the year. If you need to upload supporting documentation, this is how you do that. So again, if there's casualty loss forms, I'm not really quite sure what all you can upload, but if you feel it's important, then do that. So 8609s looks like it's the biggest one, but don't upload blank pieces of paper. You don't need to do that anymore. We fixed that problem. Okay. Any questions? I was kind of like going really fast. Once the LIHTC properties, there is an AOC for tax credit properties. There is no AOC fee for federal programs. So I believe it's 25 per unit for that property. So don't make me do the math, but it's 25 times however many units. So if it's 10 units at $250. So that's something I can easily do. But make sure that you do pay. If not, we can't close out the AOC until you do pay. So make sure all payments are done online. If you do not have that portal link, you can find that on our website. Okay. So the current answer, so the set aside, you'll get warnings throughout just to make sure all your information is correct. So before you submit, make sure the warnings are taken care of. Okay. And then you'll get this nice little notice that it's been submitted, and you submitted it before 12:31 at midnight. If that's done, then you're good to go. Okay. And maybe if you want, you can take a snapshot of that, and so you can save that for your records, just by chance something goes wonky in your submission. Okay. We do find errors. So if it's red, it must be corrected before you can proceed. Oh, crap, I'm sorry. Orange, there's other errors that show up. It can be resolved by adding a clarification in the notes. So if you're like, yeah, I know there's zero income, you can put that here. Okay. Finalizing any errors, you do need to finalize your certification year. If you do not do that, it is considered late. So make sure you finalize. And then these are all, could be your errors, and then you'll need to go back in and correct those errors. Okay. 'Cause if not, we'll have to send it back to you anyway to correct. So it's better to get those addressed before you send it to us. Yeah.
Just want to clarify, we've been doing this now since last year, and years prior, the auditors that we had were not reviewing the actual OC questionnaire. We do review the OC questionnaire. We do review all the tenant events, and we do confirm that payment was made via IHCDA online. If you mailed a paper check, which we do not accept, and we've stated for several years now, if that check is not to us processed by the 31st of January, and you should not be mailing paper checks, they should be paid via IHCDA online. Tenant events are missing, or the OC was not fully completed and filled out, you will receive a late notice. I have a lot of owners right now that are submitting state experience questionnaires to me to fill out, and I have to report that their property management companies are always late on their OCs. And the owners seem shocked to hear that. So just know that if you are a property management company that does not pay your fees via IHCDA online or fully complete the OC questionnaire or enter tenant events as required within 30 days of the event date, this will be reported to other states, and that really makes the owners or owner agents very unhappy when they find out, and that's submitted for them to bid on other awards. So just make sure that you're reading the manuals and you're complying with them, and you won't have any issues with late AOCs or fees. We do not waive fees either. So if you are assessed for the late fees or the tenant events, we do not waive them. We've made exceptions the past several years. The auditors will indeed put the late fees on your findings issues letter. So that will be clearly shared with your owner when we send those out too.
Thank you. So if there are any issue letters that you do receive, you do need to go back into IHCDA online. You'll need to find the property. You'll need to make sure that you're in the correct year and that it shows active in order for you to make those corrections. If it is not active, then you'll need to notify your auditor via email. And then we'll most likely give you a due date by which that needs to be done, and then we will close it if it is not done by that due date. So review the letter and make sure you understand the recommendations, because those recommendations do come with that issue. If it's not fixable, vacancies, whatnot, just give us a reason and those marketing efforts. The issue letter response is emailed to, the response, please email it back to the auditor, not to Megan, because she'll just send it our way. The response can be on your company letterhead or in the body of the email. However you guys feel best to respond, that's fine. So company letterhead or in the body of the email. Utility allowances, common AOC, UAs are not entered into the reporting year. UAs are not entered correctly. There's no income entered. So if it's 0, it should be 0. Tenant events not entered, so the 90-day, 365-day vacancies. The set-asides don't match. The type of funding wasn't selected for that box. The AOC report wasn't completed, and the fees not paid. Okay, so those are pretty common. All right. Average income test. Rob, Katrina, would you guys like to take this over? Please.
Yeah, can you hear me
Katrina,
okay?
yep. Thanks, Rob. Katrina will not be able to join us. She
I'm sorry.
is
Okay.
having connectivity issues, so she kept getting kicked off.
Oh,
But
bummer.
so
Okay.
it's all you, Rob.
Yep.
All right, so once you're ready to finalize your tenant events, that should actually say finalize and the arrow pointing to it, but you'll click finalize like you normally would, and you'll go to your overall error screen like Jocelyn just showed you. But then once you fix all that, you'll click next, and that will take you to the first step of passing the average income test rules. So you can go into the next slide. So here's your minimum set aside units. So you'll have this fancy grid, and you go through and you select the properties that are included in your minimum set aside. And then at the bottom, you will click the perform check. If you pass the check, it'll give you a nice message saying you passed the validation. If you didn't, it will come up and give you the amount that you're off by, and you can either reselect what you need to, or you can still click next, even though you didn't pass the validation. If you do that, you'll go to an attestation screen, and you'll have to fill that out, and we're still tweaking the wording on it, but basically it's going to say, yes, I'm aware I did not pass the validation, but I'm going to continue with the AOC anyway. But then, yeah, once you're finished with the minimum set aside units, you can click next. And then you have to pass the second part, which is the applicable fractions. So the units that you selected in the previous screen will already be pre-selected on this screen. So then you click your additional units to pass that applicable fraction test. And again, you don't have to validate it to go onto the next screen, but that attestation will come up, and you'll just have to say, yeah, I'm aware that, you know, we didn't validate it, but we're gonna go ahead and submit the AOC anyway. But if you do pass it, you'll get the nice message at the bottom that says it's validated, and then you can click next to move to the finalize screen. Once you have finalized and you go back into your units, you can select on a unit and it'll give you this grid, and it will tell you, you know, each individual year which units you used to comply with that and which ones you didn't, or whether it's been completed or not. And I
So
believe you'll be able to export that information if you need to.
So when it says not yet designated, is that because just how it was when we, like, why would I say that?
That they didn't pick that unit to be included in either
Okay.
test.
Okay.
And also on the screens when you're making selections, only units that are eligible to be selected will be available. If a unit's not eligible to be selected, it will not show up in those grids. And I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Does anyone have questions for Rob? New this year, so
So I will state, if you do the attestation and you did not pass the applicable fraction or the AIT and your owner did select on the 8609 Part 2 that they are doing income averaging, know that this will result in an 8823. So you want to ensure that if this does apply to you and the owner agent did select average income test, you want to make certain that you are clear on how to select this and fill this out, because it will result in loss of credits to the owner or the investor. Sometimes they're not the same person. Wanda, go ahead.
Okay, so this is the first time that I'm hearing about the average income test. So does this include homes or just tax credits or?
This is 8609 is specific to tax credit.
Okay,
And so if your owner decided to do average income test versus the 2050 or the 4060 or 100%, then you're mandated to fill this out as of this year when you complete your annual owner certs. And you need to have that clear communication with the owner agent or the investor to ensure that you all know what units are going to be used for the applicable fraction and for your designated units, so that you don't risk losing credits. If you do not have a AIT, then it doesn't apply to you. But this would be specific to those individuals that have AIT as the selected option on their 8609 Part 2.
oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
if AIT isn't selected in the online system, these options won't even appear for you.
Correct. All right, with that, Rob,
Yeah, I was
thank
on
you
mute.
very much.
Yes, thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. Any other questions before we move on? But it's just one more page and we're done. And then you can ask all the wonderful questions. Okay. So resource page, go here for all of the trainings that we have, all the manuals, the forms, all the HOTMA forms are now available on the compliance forms tab on this page. And then that, please make sure you do that. If you have submitted just random thoughts too, if you ask for approval, ICDA approval for your TIC or questionnaire to be tweaked a little bit based on your company's wants and needs, you'll need to resubmit that. If you've already done it this year, you'll need to submit it again with the HOTMA changes in there. Or when you come about for an audit, you could be have an issue with that. So just fair warning on that. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next year. So is there any other questions that we can address today, or you can feel free to email whomever, anything you guys have. We have about 5 minutes.
Thanks, Raquel. Angie, go ahead and ask your question.
You guys probably already put this info in or mentioned it earlier, but what's a good email address in case we come up with specific questions?
Certainly. So on our compliance website, all of the staff's email addresses are there, as well as mine. And additionally, Megan Simpson, who is our data and systems analyst. So if you go to IHCDA, our landing page, and you go to the red compliance, you will see the contact and email and phone numbers for each of the staff. So you can go specific to your region, or you can, if it's specific to the actual entry of information and not understanding the trainings or the tools that are on our website, you can reach out to Megan or myself, but our email contacts are all on that website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe I saw a hand up from somebody. Wanda, did you re-raise your hand, or was that from
Yes.
before?
Yes, I
ma'am.
did. Like, all of this information is great and wonderful, but my brain doesn't absorb all of that. So will these slides
Definitely.
be available online to print?
So yes, so currently, if you recall, we did a AOC training last year, and that's
Yes.
been on our website for over a year. So you could print those out. The only thing different from last year to this year really is the AIT piece.
Oh, okay.
And this presentation was recorded. So as soon as we get a chance to get with our marketing team and clean up the recording and such, this also will be posted on our website. And again, for your convenience, if you're subscribed to Red Notices, you'll get an alert when things are updated to the Red Compliance website.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? I know nobody's stressed because it is December, so all of your tenant events are already updated except for those that, are due January 1st, because everybody enters their tenant events within 30 days of the date of them happening, right? As is required per your agreements. So everybody's good on those. So we have no issues there. I've not had to tell not one single owner or owner agent that any property has not listed any tenant events for 2023. I'm lying. I've had to tell lots of owner agents that have submitted requests for state experience surveys that their property management company has not entered one tenant event for the year. So that should never happen. But as we're working through, there's certain things that everybody has asked for to be changed from last year. The AIT was the biggest task that we needed to get done. So a lot of things may not be updated based on asks and such, but we are working on those. We've taken your concerns, but we really needed to make sure the AIT piece, since that's new to be reported on for tax credit this year was the big lift for the system update. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, please review our compliance website. If you're not able to find the answer to your questions there, feel free to reach out to one of my staff or myself, and we'll gladly assist you. We do put the preface that when you reach out to us, please put the award number or the building identification number so that it helps us to easily identify. This time of year is very, very busy for my staff. We're not only reviewing your property, but we're reviewing all of them in our portfolio at the same time. So the more information and detail you can give us on the front end, the quicker we're able to respond. So bin numbers or award numbers are the best way. If you just tell us, Stony Place, we might have 50 Stony Places in our portfolio, or Carriage House, or Shore Village, or So bin numbers, award numbers. If you don't know them, reach out to the owner in advance, get the information, and then reach out to us with questions. Thank you guys very much for participating. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us and we'll gladly assist.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for the kind words.
Thank you.